Oh, look who it is. Ravishing Rohit Raju, the Desi Hitman, the Mocha Skin Manimal, the future two-time X Division champion. And you are here with my homies at 8-Bit Suplex Podcast. So we're the best around. You better be listening, Nimrods.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the 8-Bit Suplex here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. I am your host with the most, and I'm talking about belly. That is Josh McLaughlin, and I am joined here tonight, filling in for, of course, our favorite co-host, Sandy Gaviria, who is unable to join us this week. But you heard him on the way into this episode. You'll hear him on the way out, probably, and you'll hear him all throughout. It's Mr. Rich Latta of One Nation Radio. Rich, how are you this fine Friday evening?
Oh, I'm great, Josh. I'm happy to be here and ready for a nice second appearance here on the 8-Bit Suplex. And we're talking about a couple of things I like, Kenny Omega and Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to bury the lead, but those are two really hot topics right now, especially in the world of wrestling, wrestling adjacent, and of course, video games as a whole. So real quick, we talked last week about you doing some Rebellion review a little bit. Maybe we thought I might do some Rebellion preview, but of course we had Dan the Man Coffin step into do the preview. He's feeling a little under the weather today, so he's not doing the review, but that's okay because we plan on having you anyways for this. You are probably the biggest Kenny Omega fan that I know, Rich. And you probably have played more Mortal Kombat than most of me and my friends as well. So this is kind of a happy blend of the two things.
Yeah, man.
So I'm super stoked to have you back. I don't even remember what we talked about last time.
I think it was Fire Pro we talked about last
Fire Pro
time.
Wrestling. There you go. That makes a lot of sense. All you had to do was think about it. So, but sometimes I don't think so well on Friday nights. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, let's jump right into it, and we'll talk about Mortal Kombat first. Of course, on HBO Max, we had the new Mortal Kombat movie released. I was worried about it because the last Mortal Kombat feature film we saw was Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
And that one was not a movie about nothing. Like,
really
to put it lightly.
It really was. And, we're both 90s kids. We grew up in the era where everybody was saying, oh, this is the hot new IP. Let's make a movie about it. We had a Super Mario Brothers movie that absolutely sucked. We had a Mortal Kombat movie that came out that was pretty damn good. If nothing else, it gave us the coolest soundtrack, theme song for any movie at that time. I'm not someone that listens to electronic dance music, Rich. I don't know how much you listen to, but if it was the Mortal Kombat theme, I was definitely losing my shit over it.
I want to say I had, when I was a kid, I used to do karate. I want to say I had a form routine that was based off of set to the music of the Mortal Kombat shit. So yeah,
like hopefully it wasn't set to the moves of Mortal Kombat, Rich. That would be a little bit graphic for children to be doing karate too.
But yeah, I love the movie in '95. I used to have the illegal cable box, which is ironically around like how I started watching a lot of wrestling too, with like Starrcade '95. So it was all around that same time. And I watched that movie over and over and over until I knew the lines.
Right. And, what's funny is that a lot of the lines in that movie, some of them are catchphrases, of course, lifted from the game, stuff like flawless victory or fatality. And actually what's funny, I believe in the fight with Goro, Johnny Cage in the 95 movie says flawless victory. And it's completely falsely used because he gets the shit beat out of him for a good 10 minutes. Which, of course, if you've played Mortal Kombat once, you know that a flawless victory means that you've won without getting hit.
Right.
It's used correctly in this movie, so I am happy to report that. But, we'll talk maybe a little bit light spoiler here, so, skip ahead a couple minutes if you don't want to hear anything about the movie from this year that just came out. We won't go too spoiler heavy, but just overall thoughts on the new movie, Rich.
I liked it. I'm a big fan of the series. I'm a big fan of the timeline. I recently started playing back Mortal Kombat last year and spent dozens of hours on YouTube putting the whole story back together, so I can be ready for this game that I had purchased and went all the way through this. And I know the movie's not necessarily based on this timeline. The movie's kind of its own timeline from what I'm reading on it. I liked it because it's the start of something new. It's an
Right.
opening chapter. I know everyone wanted every single person in there. They wanted the tournament. They wanted, them to basically blow it all off. But how I saw this thing was, oh my God, they're gonna try to make their own Marvel like type
Right.
series to where like there's like dozens of movies, and then there's characters coming along. And if you know anything about Mortal Kombat, no one dies. Everyone always comes back. They just get bounced to another realm or something. Like
Right.
I think it's really cool. Like, if you guys have never seen like the actual story, because a lot of people just played the games in the '90s and then just kind of fell off or whatever, and that's cool, but it's really interesting. I've seen videos as short as 7 minutes explaining the entire timeline. So do yourself a favor and check that out. Like if you're like into the Mortal Kombat backstory, I'm not a person that's really into even like superhero movies like that, but Mortal Kombat's always done it for me.
Yeah, I think you make an apt point there to kind of combine, like compare the Mortal Kombat fandom and superhero fandom kind of loosely, and that's not just because of the Mortal Kombat versus DC fighting game, which there's mixed reviews and mixed thoughts about. Batman mixing it up with Shao Kahn, but it's no more ridiculous than him fighting Superman, guys. It really isn't.
Right.
But yeah, people expect, oh my God, we have to have every single Mortal Kombat character in this movie. And it's like, well, no, I mean, in the same way, you can't have every single superhero show up in the first Avengers movie. You got to build up to kind of what you're working at. And before the movie even came out, Warner Brothers came out and said, hey, if this first one does okay, we're ready to do 4. So,
Right.
We'll see how it goes. Apparently, the reaction to this first one has gone well. It went number 1 at the box office with $22.5 million, which is such an astronomically low number to be number 1 at the box office, but it's also like the highest opening weekend box office in like a year, right? Other than I believe Tenet might have done more than that. Of course, which is the big Christopher Nolan masturbatory experience. But
I like the fighting. I thought
it was so good. By
the time like the peak of the movie, I'll just say, comes, like I was like pumping my fist in the air like when my man comes back. So I'll just leave it at that for those that want to see it. But there are a couple things in the movie I can say, hey, that doesn't quite line up. Like, but I'm such a mark for Mortal Kombat. It just kind of went over my head. So I'm all in.
Yeah, no, I am too. And for me, Rich, it's like you said, it started way back in the '90s, and so I did play the original Mortal Kombat when it released. 2 home consoles on Sega Genesis. I was not allowed to play it. I was not allowed to own it. This was buddy across the street had it, and I would go to his house. And then it was one of the first things that my brother ever trusted me with. My brother's 4 years older. He said, listen, we're going to go to Tommy's. He has Mortal Kombat. And I swear to God, if you tell Mom, I will beat the crap out of you for the next 3 weeks.
That's hilarious.
My mother still doesn't know I played Mortal Kombat at Tommy's. So it's okay. She doesn't listen to this podcast either. She doesn't know what podcasts are.
I had it on Sega. I had Mortal Kombat 2, and my older sister used to play with me. Like, it wasn't banned at all, like, my house, but I just got the living shit kicked out of me forever by my older sister, who just beat me mercilessly in Mortal Kombat. And I still remember the code to this day, the test codes.
Sure.
Like back, down, back, forward, back, forward. Like, why I remember that 25 years later, I have no idea. But yeah, I spent a lot of time on Mortal Kombat.
Well, and you know what's funny is it's a game that originally comes out in 1992. It's jumping into a realm of games. Not to use the word realm like we're talking about Mortal Kombat, but it jumps into a genre of games that is dominated predominantly by Eastern and Japanese style fighting games, where you have Street Fighter really taking off here, Super Street Fighter 2 and the like. And those games are fast, they're fluid, they're super high pace. But they kind of lack the realism. There's no blood. There's no, and I wouldn't necessarily call Mortal Kombat realistic because, of course, there is fireballs and four-armed
Dragons.
dragon and things like that. But there's blood. There's decapitation. There's the fatalities. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I played on the pit level, and you get the opportunity to finish him, and you throw that uppercut, and they drop down to the spike below. That absolutely blew my mind at 4 or 5 years old. So, which I as someone who has a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old now, I cannot imagine them experiencing that because it just doesn't line up with what they do
right
at all, right?
I feel like we were so much like older, like as kids, than these kids are now. It's weird.
It really is. It really, and I know every generation goes through that period, but for me, it's kind of like, okay, when I was 5, I was playing Mortal Kombat, and yeah, my kid's not doing that.
That's funny.
So, but yeah, no, it was really good, and for me, like anytime I pick up Mortal Kombat, I have to go with one of the kind of different color themed ninjas. So for me, like Sub-Zero was the first guy that I always played as. Eventually I'd get pretty good at Scorpion, but the other ones that came after that never really interested me that much. Shadow was okay. I got used to kind of him, but who's the guy you got to pick up the sticks right now, Rich? Win a match. Who's the guy you're going with? Guy or gal, I should say.
Probably Sub-Zero or Liu Kang or Kotal Khan.
Okay.
Kotal Khan's a newer guy.
Sure.
So he came out in the games about 10 years ago, but he's kind of like imagine if Shao Kahn was good and and kind of like an Aztec warrior. Kotal Khan's got a sick move set, but out of the traditional characters, I'm definitely probably going Sub-Zero. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, why not Scorpion?" I'm like, "Oh, to get over here is cool," but if you want to win, you want to freeze somebody so they can't hit you, they can't do shit to you.
Exactly.
So Sub-Zero's always been, even when I started playing the newest one, the guy started kind of figuring it out with the quickest was Sub-Zero and also Katana.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me too, like I would sometimes I would play as Sonya Blade. I thought she had a pretty good moveset. But yeah, I mean, just it's such a fun game series. I don't know that I don't know that I've played enough of the entries to definitively give like a favorite one. But if you had to choose one Mortal Kombat game, Rich, what's the one that you're going to go with?
I'm going to go with the newest one, honestly. Mortal Kombat 11. And that's just because of like the fighting's so great. They have so many levels, so many characters. They have all the old characters brought back, reskinned like from their original stuff, and just everyone's in it. So like,
Sure.
and it's all eras. So they're out of the old games, I'll probably say number 4, maybe.
Okay.
No, 2.
2. I was going to say, I think 2 is
2.
probably of the early ones. 2 is the one that's most beloved.
Yeah.
But we'd be remiss to talk about Mortal Kombat, Rich, and not talk about the fact that Mortal Kombat is really the reason why we have the ESRB rating system. Period. We have people like Joe Lieberman. Who could forget Joe Lieberman? And we have Tipper Gore. Tipper, of course, was very involved in the parental advisory stickers on CDs and things of the like, which she was unaware that just made us want to buy them more.
Right.
It's kind of like, oh, this is a rap CD, but it's not parental advisory. Like, what is that? Like, so, but yeah, no. So the ESRB, if you're not familiar with it, of course, is the Entertainment Software Rating Board. That's where you get your E for everyone, your T for teen, your M for mature. And this is also about the same time period, a little bit right after where they come up with the PG-13 rating for movies. Because for those that aren't aware, it used to go PG right to R. And so that there's a gap in between that. There was a lot of PG movies that had the F word in it, and there's a lot of PG movies that show boobs in it because they couldn't figure out how to cross that threshold exactly into R.
That's very funny.
Yeah. So I think like Howard the Duck, for instance, is a famous example of there was breast, albeit duck breasts, but there is of course nipples on the duck. Not to get sidetracked by that. But yeah, so Mortal Kombat is hyper violent. there's issues where Midway wants to put it on Super Nintendo. Nintendo says no, not unless you remove the blood. So you had to, there was the blood codes and different things like that to add it back in, because Mortal Kombat, of course, they kind of Midway kind of leaked what those codes would be so that you could get blood on your Super Nintendo around Nintendo's back. So there's all kinds of kind of different things. I'm really young at this time period. You and I are about the same age, but I'm sure you remember some of that kind of, even the lingering, even towards like 95, 96, as Mortal Kombat continues and the Mortal Kombat movie comes out, there's a lot of rehashing of this conversation about whether or not kids should be playing Mortal Kombat.
So I luckily, like, I didn't really I heard about that stuff later on. Like I was kind of shielded by the fact I had an older sister.
Sure.
And my mom just was like, "Hey, she used to watch wrestling. Let me watch pretty much whatever, all the adult movies." It was just like, "Hey, what you figure it out." Like, so, like, that's kind of how it seemed, at least.
I got
but
you. Yeah, your mom wasn't worried about the PG-13 rating, is what you're saying,
right? Like, in the video games, like I got lucky. Like, I kind of missed all that.
That's funny. Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, Mortal Kombat, awesome game series. Check out the new movie on HBO Max. If you are vaccinated or you feel like you can go in socially distance enough, it is playing in theaters. Like I said, it did do 22.5 million open weekend, which is pretty awesome, consider all things considered. And we're going to talk about something now, Rich, that also did pretty awesome as far as numbers is concerned. And that is the Impact Wrestling pay-per-view Rebellion. Rebellion was, it's not normally their big shows, right? It's not Slammiversary. And even Hard to Kill has been pretty big for them. So, but with Rebellion, of course, we have the looming main event, which we will discuss primarily in the fallout of that later on, of Kenny Omega bringing the AEW world title on the line against Impact Wrestling world title holder Rich Swann in the Impact world title with a winner-take-all match. But, up and down the card, Rich, this was a pretty solid card for them. We have, by my count, 8 matches. Pretty good. There was one match that kind of stood out as weaker, and we'll touch on that towards the end. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good showing by Impact Wrestling, Rich.
Yeah, I actually caught the last 3 matches pay-per-view, and it was all the title matches, as well with the Taylor Wilde run-in. But for me, this was like the main event felt really big going into it. That day earlier, there was legitimate buzz all over Twitter. Like, there was a big match coming tonight, and you can attribute that to Omega and Swan and the fantastic work they did in the build, including that press conference, which was go out of your way to see television. And by the time the day rolled around, it was like, man, one of these dudes is going to have all the gold. And, I think Impact's done a great job kind of repairing their reputation, amongst the wrestling world. And, putting Kenny Omega on the show, like, it just has done nothing but explode business. I'm hearing like, numbers like 9 times as many pay-per-view buys as the last show that didn't have Kenny Omega on it, which would have been Bound for Glory,
right?
Stuff like that. So it's like, all these guys are doing is increasing business and having great matches, which is like, that's the combo for good things to happen.
Yeah, that's the whole game, isn't it? I mean, get more eyes on your product, and then when the eyes are on your product, you deliver. And I will say there is 2 actually title matches before you tuned in, Rich. The lead off of the show was the X Division title match between 3 really strong wrestlers. Match goes 11 minutes or so, and that's the defending champion at the time, Ace Austin of the X Division, taking on Josh Alexander and he who should not be named, the Filipino wrestler whose social media accounts are all straight trash. I don't think I need to mention his name this week because it's just been next level awful and he didn't win. So, you know what? You can stay nameless, sir. But yes, all 3 guys came out, put on an absolute clinic. if this is one you missed, and I know you missed this one, Rich, it's definitely worth going back and watching. Like I said, it's not a huge amount of your time to go back and see it. Definitely go check it out. Josh Alexander walks away as your new X Division champion. Well deserved. And, I think Dan had penciled him in as the winner simply because he wears headgear, because Dan is a sucker for headgear. And I can't say that I blame him, Rich.
Yeah, Josh Alexander getting the Impact belt, the X belt. I think it's kind of something to throw him to make sure he doesn't get lost without Ethan Page. It did just break up his tag team. His partner left the company, and I think this is a good way to help him stand out and move forward. Maybe he can build this up and then maybe do an option C or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna move on to the next match, Violent by Design. Which is, of course, the stable led by Eric Young. He did not participate in this match because he did blow out his ACL. So we have the team of Diener, Joe Doring, and Rhino, who are all a part of Violent by Design. And then the surprise return of W. Morrissey. Now, if you weren't paying attention, you'll say, Josh, who the hell is W. Morrissey? And I'll say, you remember that guy, Big Cass? It's about 80% of him, because W. Morrissey looks like $1 million, Rich.
Yeah, man. I'm really actually impressed with him, and it really hasn't been much. There's like a Psycho City Kevin Nashian quality about Cass, or W. Morrissey, I should say.
Listen, I'm going to make that mistake later in the show. Don't worry about it, Rich. I'm going to call him Big Cass at least 9 times tonight.
Yeah, man. Like you start seeing him, around his roster, and he looks huge. He's in better shape than he's been. He's wrestling in the jeans and the Timberlands, and kind of got like an aggressive vibe. He's using the power bomb as a finish. He's keeping his promos short and sweet, and he looks like a guy. It's like, shit, you want to build around him. Like, if this was the '90s, like, he would be on top. Like,
Rich, if this was 1997, he would be like the biggest.
Oh my God.
In the world.
Yeah, really like would. So. And we all know the trials and tribulations he's kind of been through, like in his personal life, and with Enzo, and then he's had a long struggle as far as just getting booked in the business again, because it's just been tough for the guy. So Impact, we made the joke, Impact's like Last Chance U. If you can't, I think it's a perfect place for him to start rebuilding himself. And maybe, just keep moving up the ladder and doing his thing. Maybe either he can become kind of a centerpiece here, or I'm sure he has his eyes on getting back to WWE at some point.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of what he does. And like you said, he has he's building himself back up. He's been very open about his struggles with depression, which I say, hey man, good on you. Get your help. And then he's also, being someone that is in the wrestling industry, in a very, very macho man kind of world, not to mention, Macho Man Randy Savage, but just to be in that kind of like, like you got to be a real man kind of sport, to say, hey, I need help. Like, I think that takes a lot of guts, and I absolutely commend him for it. He did pick up the pin in this 8-man tag match, which had him and Violent by Design against Chris Sabin, Eddie Edwards, James Storm, and Willie Mack. Kind of like, the gatekeepers of Impact Wrestling, if you want to look at it that way. He winds up hitting Willie Mack with that big old bomb, and gets him after a really good 10-minute match here, Rich. I was actually pretty impressed with this one. It was pretty good. And then it led us into a match that was a match between Brian Myers and Matt Cardona. This one went entirely too long, in part because it looked like, and I don't know that we've gotten confirmation officially, unofficially what happened, but it looks like Matt Cardona hits his knee. Ref throws up an X at one point. The camera's cut away from the ref throwing the X. Myers, whispers something to somebody. He picks up Cardona, hits him with two of his big lariats, and then gets the win, and we're out of there on that one. Nothing
fake X angles like typically suck.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that it's not a fake X, and I'm hoping that he actually was legitimately hurt, because when you see referees throw up the X, that should still mean something, in my opinion. because
Look,
I
work
like
me,
to,
but like
right,
do it like if you're gonna do a fake X, like make sure like that shit is like, you got to be doing
right,
like an angle of the year.
right, or make it so that the character is like turning heel, gets the referee to throw up the X, and then reveals himself to be fine right away.
Right,
Let's do
right.
something like that. Don't do what happened here if this was a fake X, and we really don't know because the day that this aired, the day that this pay per view came out, they were doing tapings for this week's show
Hmm.
that aired. So I don't know if they did the taping for this week's Impact before he got hurt. I don't really know what that timeline kind of looks like because he looks fine when he wrestles in this week's Impact against Brian Myers. But we'll see kind of how it goes. That match ends. We get to the Knockouts tag team title match between Jordan Grace and her partner Rachel Ellering, who was revealed to be her mystery partner that she was bringing in last week. And they take the belts off of Fire and Flava, Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz. Rachel Ellering, Rich, is someone that we got to see on the loop a few times down here in the Tampa area. I saw her at Mayhem Classic 2. She's someone that I've always thought could do good work. She just, for whatever reason, hasn't gotten to take off much in the same way that her dad did back in the day. But I think she does a pretty good job, Rich.
I think, like you mentioned, like she's had some injury bad luck.
Yeah.
I think she's had some stuff politically that's kind of held her back, and she's had, like conditioning issues from what I've gathered. And if she can just like figure that out, like there's another great spot for somebody to rebuild here.
Yeah.
Putting her with Jordan Grace. Jordan Grace, of course, has tons of credibility and impact. She's been there a couple of years. She was I think she may have been the X Division champion, or she challenged for it before.
She thought she won it, but it was a trick by Rohit Raju because he never
Gotcha.
officially put it up. Friend of the show, of course, Rohit Raju, who has an open door to come back anytime he wants to. But yes, she did wrestle Rohit and win. It just wound up not being for the X Division title.
Right, and it's a good place to start. Impact's a company you can belt somebody up right away to just get them off running. It's not like it's like it's WWE and it's like they put the title on you and it's like the kiss of death and there's nothing else to do with you. And with Impact, they've always shown a level of respect for their women's division. So Grace and Ellering, bring it on. Sad to see Fire and Flava lose though, because I enjoy them.
Yeah, I'm sad to see it too. I am happy to announce though that they do have a rematch at Under Siege. So we'll see him get another chance. This isn't the preview show for Under Siege, Rich, but I don't think it looks good for them. Whole lot of power behind Jordan Grace and Rachel Ellering, that's for sure. The last match before you tuned in, Rich, was the last man standing match between Trey Miguel and Sami Callihan. This one goes 15 minutes, a little long in the teeth, but you always get that with last man standing matches. Trey took some really nasty bumps from the sadistic mind of Sami Callihan. But Trey, he's someone that, you kind of wonder why he's still in Impact after the rest of his trio went off to become tag team champions in NXT. But you know what? He seems to be doing okay though, Rich.
Yeah, always hear his name. And he has some talent. He's a pretty good high flyer, and it's a case of like guy being away from the group, sink or swim time. Like either A is gonna be like, man, like you see what those guys are doing on in NXT, like they're winning belts and starting to get over a little bit. What you gonna do? And it's always good when you get a pay-per-view match to prove yourself in.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And getting a win over Sami Callihan, that's a good way to do it. He did a cutter to Sami to a table from the apron to the floor. So the next match on the card, of course, we talked about, Impact is the first of the companies to really throw open that forbidden door, of course, by bringing in Finn Juice, who are their tag team champions right now. They had a pretty decent match here with the Good Brothers. Dan and I last week had hoped that we would limit the amount of Doc Gallows that we would see. It wound up being a pretty Doc Gallows heavy match, Rich. But I was actually pretty okay with it. I thought this was a pretty good match. Finn Juice steals one and kind of walks away. And I'm interested in your thoughts on this, Rich, because Dan and I had in the predictions of this had kind of wondered if maybe the Japanese lockdown due to the recent strains of COVID, if that would play into them not dropping the belts just yet.
I think that's a great point that you guys made, and based on the timing, the belts seemed like they were up in the air on the day of the show. It could go either way. I think as long as they have this ability to work with New Japan, take advantage of it, and also you don't need to necessarily tie the belts up with the Good Brothers if they're going to be with Kenny as well,
right?
Because then it's kind of man, you can't they're going to be beating everybody. So and there's just too much tied up in that top angle. And I think it's smart to keep the belts elsewhere. Now you can get another team in the mix. Good Brothers is still they're main eventing the next show. They didn't need the belts. They wouldn't be defending them. They're in a 6-man. So I think this is good booking here. And the match was match was cool. It was probably 3 1/4 or something.
Yeah, it wasn't anything that's going to knock the doors down or anything like that, but it was a serviceable title match, which might be, Rich, a tick above what I could say about this next one. Knockouts title match with the reigning Deonna Purrazzo, of course, accompanied as always to the ring by Kimberly and Susan, versus Tenille Dashwood. You may know her as Emma if you haven't been paying attention to Impact Wrestling. And she is, of course, accompanied to the ring by Caleb with a K. There's only so many spots I think that these two women could have gotten to, Rich. And I don't know that I think they kind of overstayed their welcome a little bit. They missed the finish a couple times. If you ask me, this goes 9.5 minutes. You could have told me it was 19.5 minutes, Rich, and I would have believed it. It felt really long. I don't know about you, but to me, it felt pretty long.
It's been a long time since Paige versus Emma. Let's just say that.
Yeah. But, it's Impact's kind of running out of people here, though, for Deonna to challenge Deonna, a point that's made on this week's Impact. And I thought that Tenille would at least show us a little bit of what she used to run out with Emma. And then, it makes me ask, okay, is it more that Paige was just being Paige? Probably more than Deonna can carry Tenille, at least at this point in her career. But it wasn't bad. I wouldn't dud it out or anything like that. But I could have seen more from it.
Yeah, same.
So post match, Susan and Kimberly, of course, decided that they're going to pile on and start beating up Tenille. And who but, of course, the wild child, Taylor Wilde, a surprise nobody had coming, Rich, because she hasn't wrestled in Impact in 10 years, does a post-match run-in where she saves Tenille and basically challenges Deonna for the Knockouts title.
Yeah, man. In the quick part, I didn't watch Impact back in the day when she was here, but in the quick, running she did, she looks like she was more than capable in the ring. She had good snap and great athleticism, and hell, bring her on.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, it's gonna be someone they bring back. I think at some point to take the title off of Deonna. I don't see anyone in that locker room right now taking it off of her. It just, I just don't see it. But anywho, that wraps up the pre-show, so to speak, not to take anything away from everyone that wrestled hard on the pay-per-view. But what people tuned in for, Rich, was to see Kenny Omega take on Rich Swann for the winner takes all main event. This match goes 23 minutes, 1 second. And man, I used to watch Rich Swann in 205 Live weekly. I tuned in. I used to watch 205 weekly. And I'd see guys like Rich Swann, and I'd see guys, like Mustafa Ali and Cedric Alexander go out and have really good cruiserweight matches, which I love. I really enjoy cruiserweight matches. I know you're a fan of the flips as well, Rich. So for me, I was always
Flips
like,
all
okay,
day.
Rich Swann is a high quality cruiserweight wrestler. After watching this match, you could put this man in title matches, Rich, and he'll deliver a good match. I thought Kenny was excellent, as always. I thought Rich stepped up to the plate and delivered. This was a fantastic win for Kenny Omega. I'm not a big star ratings guy. I don't have a good baseline to go off of, Rich. I in our chat said 5 stars. I don't know that this is a 5-star match. I don't know what constitutes a 5-star versus a 4-star, but this was a damn good title match, Rich.
Yeah, man. I would since we're on the topic of stars, I would have went like 4.5 on it myself. Like right in the middle of that.
Sure.
But Kenny beat the shit out of Rich Swann. Just like he just kicked his ass. Like,
Yeah, he did.
and I don't know if Rich Swann was tired at the end, but it all kind of worked for me. Either way, I thought they had 2 flubs on the top rope. But sometimes like with those, it's like a mess up like that will add to the match because the danger or something like that. I don't know if that was necessarily the case here, but I like how they tricked you into thinking that there was going to be like absolute fuckery going down. We had
That's right.
millions of people around the ring.
Yeah.
We had Aubrey showing up, flying in, but she's calling it right down the middle because they don't ever mess with Aubrey's credibility ever. So that should have been a dead giveaway too, that nothing was going to happen. And for the most part, this was a clean match, and I appreciate them for it because people were not tuned in for that bullshit. They guaranteed a winner, and they gave you one. And I can't think of a better guy. Like if you're talking about Impact, and we had a lot of people the past couple of weeks asking about, I don't know if this is a good faith or not, but they're like, what does Impact get out of this, and all this stuff. And it's like, well, you guys heard the numbers that we talked about earlier in the show. And then there's also something I like to term like the social hierarchy, and also just competing for the timeline. Impact was trending over the Oscars, or right along with it, like first or second on Twitter all night. And it's like, what do you mean? Like people are tuning in and watching this, whether it's legally or illegally. And it seems like a lot of people bought it legally.
Yeah.
So this is a feather in the cap of Kenny Omega, a feather in the cap of Rich Swann, like of being, like you kind of like got to look at it like this with Swann. Like he was, for me, he was like fighting for his legitimacy, I think.
Yeah.
And this goes even before the match, like in a press conference, it was like he was just trying to hold on while just Kenny Omega just peaks as a character. And Rich Swann, like I said on One Nation Radio, had like this everyman kind of quality about him. Like, man, you just want to see him shut this guy up. And he lost this time, but I think a lot of people are going to remember like this program for him, and he's gonna always have this in his back pocket and be like, hey, I was able to, it takes 2 people to go in there, to draw and also to put a compelling match together. And what these guys did was it was like, we were passing the photos around that were pretty funny, like the Ric Flair and Rick Martel NWA AWA champion photos, and Harley Race and Bob Backlund and all this stuff. And it's like, maybe it's not as big as that, but these are our guys that are doing that. So I'm gonna be happy for them. So I think this is good business all around, and we'll see how it goes. And I'm ready to enjoy the ride. And I loved all the pictures that came out in the back. I had a great time on Twitter after, just being the Kenny Omega fan I am. But
I think
this is awesome.
Yeah, I think above being a Kenny Omega fan, you're also a genuine fan of professional wrestling, Rich. And for professional wrestling, this was a win for the industry as a whole. Like you said, the trend along with the Oscars. Like, are you kidding me? The Oscars, like the biggest event in movies of the year, and Kenny Omega and Rich Swann have it trending next to it. That doesn't happen. WWE doesn't do that. They, I don't know that AEW's trended above or with a big, thing. Obviously, the Oscars did have a down year as it comes to viewership, but still, professional wrestling trending with the Oscars, very, very important. And one more thing before we wrap up talking about Rebellion, Rich. How good was it to hear the voice of Mauro Ranallo?
Oh man, he made it feel like really big, and apparently this this match like did a lot for him personally. Like this made him like kind of feel like he was inspired again. So it was good to hear more Ronaldo. I don't think he went too nuts with the references. I know they can get on some people's nerves, but it was good to hear Moro. I'm not going to talk about his hair or nothing, but
No,
um,
we'll leave that one. Thankfully, this is an audio. This is an audio medium, so we don't have to show any pictures or anything. So, but yeah, if you missed Mauro's hair, you can check it out if you want to. But you know, I for me, if you hear Mauro Ranallo call a match, Rich, it feels important, and that's a lot of because of what he did with Takeover, right? I mean, all those big NXT matches that he's called, screaming at the top of his lungs when things happen and really just getting into it. When you have a guy like Mauro, no offense to Matt Striker, D'Lo Brown, when you have Mauro call that match, it makes it feel very legitimate, in a way that I don't know that anyone else in professional wrestling can. Not today.
Right.
But that
Totally
was
with you.
That was Rebellion. Really fun pay-per-view. I enjoyed the card top to bottom. Best pay-per-view that I've watched as a part of this podcast, hands down. And I'm looking forward very much to Under Siege, which we're going to talk. I'm going to just do a quick synopsis for this week's episode, just because we had so much to talk about with Rebellion and Mortal Kombat. A brief synopsis here of what happened on this week's show. And we'll talk about a couple of things that were announced. A new appearance coming next week to Impact Wrestling, keeping that forbidden door open. And then just a quick preview of what we have so far for the Under Siege Impact Plus special event. So the episode kicks off with the Impact Locker Room coming over to Scott D'Amore's office. They're angry. They want to know what's going to be happening about it. They're teasing a Kenny Omega in-ring celebration this whole time. Scott talks to Don Callis, who says, "Oh yeah, Kenny's super excited. I'm sending him the Zoom link now." Scott informs Don that it's actually in Kenny's contract that he has to show up in person, or he will have the Impact World title stripped from him, because it's in his contract that he has to show up in person to do the championship celebration. And if he doesn't, he loses the Impact World Championship. And per the agreement with Tony Khan, Kenny would be suspended indefinitely from Impact and AEW. I thought that was a nice little wrinkle to the story. Then, of course, after that, it kicks into the intro sequence there for the show. I don't normally talk about how the show entrance looks, but it does now already, just from the weekend, include Taylor Wilde and W. Morrissey in the intro. And then
that's about as quick as the social media team.
They are the fastest in the business.
When they see two wrestlers they used to wrestle for Impact somewhere else.
Yeah, do yourselves a favor. Do yourselves a favor. Every Wednesday night when you're watching Dynamite, have your phone open on Impact Wrestling Twitter, because it goes nuts. But yeah, so they already added Taylor Wilde and W. Morrissey into the intro video. And of course, the intro video fades away with Kenny Omega in the center of the ring, holding the AEW title belt as well as the Impact World Championship. So pretty cool little wrinkles there, and the change to the intro. Scott D'Amore then addresses the locker room out in the ring. He says, "Hey, this is a special occasion." Rich Swann understood it. Kenny Omega understood it. Rich Swann does not have a rematch clause for this match because it was a winner take all. There's no way to do the kind of, I'm just challenging for my Impact one that I lost, because he technically lost all three. So because of that, there's a 6-man number one contender match specifically for the Impact World Championship match that will happen at Under Siege. There's going to be a sequence of one-on-one matches to determine that. The first match, while the entire locker room is still out at the ring, is announced by Scott D'Amore. It is Jake versus Chris Bay, who makes a return after a few weeks away. And Chris Bay gets a win after a Rohit Raju, friend of the show, interfering by grabbing onto Jake's leg. Chris Bay takes advantage of it, hits him from behind, does a legs on the rope pin, and Chris Bay moves on into the 6-man contender match. We had some chatter backstage between Don Callis and Sami Callihan. Pretty good stuff there. Taylor Wilde's backstage, talks about first time back in 10 years. Tenille says, hey, let's be a tag team. Let's go after the tag team titles. And Taylor tells her about 10 times no. And Tenille is still left hopeful that she will have her as a partner at some point, because Tenille and Caleb with the K are the purest form of narcissism in Impact Wrestling. After that, we get the aforementioned W. Morrissey. I think you saw clips of this match, Rich.
Yes. Awesome.
It was a absolute 90-second squash match between W. Morrissey and Sam Beal, whom I have never seen before, Rich. I don't know if you've ever seen Sam Beal.
So might not see him again after what happened.
Got me. I think W. Morrissey with the jackknife powerbomb put him through the ring, Rich.
Yeah. And W. Morrison with the W.
Yep, exactly. The W in W. Morrissey stands for win, Rich.
Right.
So moving on from there, we get a preview of the match that's happening later in the card, which is, of course, Kimberly taking on Taylor Wilde for Taylor Wilde's first match back. This is the first time I'm going to mention it. I'm probably going to mention it again. Not good ring gear for Kimberly this week. I'm going to move on. So Deanna decides that she is not going to go ringside to support Kimberly, sends her out with just Susan. She's just going to watch. And then she said, the backstage reporter says to her, hey, any reason why you don't want to be out there to see Taylor Wilde return? And she goes, why would I be afraid of her? I've beaten every knockout on this roster. Of course, we know in wrestling, Rich, when someone says I've beaten everybody, someone
always shows up.
Always. So, of course, the big stare down with the big Jessica Havoc, which I don't believe Deanna has had a Impact Knockouts Championship match against her yet. But she is actually running out of options with the Taylor Wilde match notwithstanding. Then we see Willie Mack. He challenges W. Morrissey to a match at Under Siege. That's interesting. It's going to be a very interesting match because Willie Mack, though he's bigger, he's a little bit more athletic, not afraid to bust out the flips. But W. Morrissey, they seem to be building him up. I don't know that he's signed a contract, Rich, with Impact, but he's in the package at the front of the show.
Shit, if I'm Impact, I'm getting him on paper. I'm like, we're gonna get you for a year at least.
Yeah, just hey, rehab here, last chance you it. And then also, I mean, he looks like right now a younger, more fit Joe Doran.
Edge. Oh, I was gonna say.
I know he's got the edge. He's got the edge hair and beard kind of combo going on. So you got that there. He's a bit taller than Edge, I think.
Yeah.
Though I don't think that W. Morrissey is 7 feet tall as he used to book himself. But he is a bit taller than Adam Copeland, also known as Edge. But I mean, I don't know. We'll get into that more with the Under Siege preview show. But I think that's when you circle on the Big Men Smack and Meat Big E special for that card. Certainly. Next match on the night, Taylor Wilde takes on Kimberly. As you can see in my notes.
So this man shared his notes with me, right? So this is the second time in the notes. This man said at first is Kimberly, not good ring gear. And then like for emphasis the next time, Kimberly has really awful ring gear. I think I need to seek this out.
Yeah, I'll send you a picture later, Rich. It is not flattering. But even worse though is that this match, it felt like it was Kimberly's first time wrestling in 10 years, not Taylor Wilde's. Kimberly was kind of, she didn't hit her moves the same way she did. Her kicks didn't strike the way she used to. I mean, I've seen her front and center on the loop back when she was with NXT. She was, I forget what her name was when she was in WWE. Abby Lath, I think is what she went by.
Abby Lath. Yeah.
And she's a different wrestler now than then. She's doing more character work, and the character work is totally fine. I just didn't like the ring gear, as my notes alluded to, and as I've mentioned now 3 times. but it was a 6-minute match, and I was clock checking like the whole time because it just felt like it just needed to end. And eventually it did. Kimberly gets the loss here. Taylor Wilde gets her with kind of an Indian deathlock type submission, and then Susan starts to beat down Taylor Wilde before the save by Tennille Dashwood, acting out of someone else's interest for the first time ever. Because I mean, the woman's music starts off by saying it's all about me. Which of course is the same character I believe that she ran with Emma. It's still all about her, but in this case, it was about Taylor Wilde and trying to get that tag team rolling. Rich, that's what they're aiming for. At least Tennille is. I still don't think Taylor's going to bite, but. So we get a backstage segment next with Scott D'Amore talking. He gets interrupted in his conversation by Moose. James Storm then interrupts that conversation, and it leads to them finding out that they have a match for the 6-man number 1 contender match. So the winner of James Storm and Moose next week will move on to Under Siege. X Division title rematch, Ace Austin and Josh Alexander, another good one. I could watch this duo wrestle a lot of times, and I don't know that it would get old. A lot of really brutal hits. There was at one point a kind of a back slam that Alexander does to Ace Austin on the apron. That was a very sickening thud. Really good match, really fun. Josh Alexander retains with the ankle lock, and Ace Austin, out of rematches, will have to move on and get to the back of the line for the X Division. Now, this next part is part of an ongoing theme in the show, Rich, where Don Callis is desperately trying to get Kenny Omega to the Impact Zone, because if he does not show up, of course, he is stripped of his title. So at this point, earlier in the show, he had, he's on the phone with Kenny Omega, telling him, "Hey, take the jet. You'll be here in 30 minutes. It's no big. Listen, I'm sorry. It's not me. It's in the contract. I know. I would if Scott wasn't such a stickler about it, I wouldn't be telling you to do this. All right, just get here. It's not a big deal. Just take the jet. Yeah, I'm sure. Take the jet." So then he realizes at this point in the show that he doesn't have anyone to go to the private airport to pick Kenny Omega up when he flies in on the private jet. So he winds up hiring Johnny Swinger and Hernandez to go pick him up.
That's hilarious.
And, on commentary, Stryker and D'Lo are like, who hires Johnny Swinger to go pick someone up from the airport? Like, what a terrible idea this is. And D'Lo, throughout things, like, keeps on, I just keep checking my text messages. Still no word on Kenny Omega showing up. And then, they're doing time checks throughout the night. Like, how much time does Kenny have to get here to the Impact Zone? And it's like, he's only got 17 minutes left. So they just kind of keep on doing this thing kind of throughout the thing. After that, we get a backstage segment where the rematch is set for the Knockouts Tag Team title match. Fire and Flava try to basically bury Jordan Grace and say, look, we beat your ass a bunch of times with every other tag team partner you had. And then you went and got Rachel Ellering, who probably could have beaten us by herself. That's how good Rachel Ellering is. You suck, Jordan Grace. But the rematch is set. We'll see what happens. And then we have a rematch here that I won't talk about much because there was just another match that happened. Matt Cardona versus Brian Myers. This time, Matt Cardona gets the win. Like I said, I don't know when this was taped versus when Rebellion happened, just because I know from like different wrestlers' Twitters, like tapings were happening that Sunday. So I'm not sure. I'm not certain what was taped before the pay-per-view, what was taped after. So who knows? Matt Cardona could legitimately be hurt. He was not really, he was kind of selling the knee a little bit in this match. But who knows if that's the precursor or the postcursor. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But Matt Cardona gets the win, and we found out that was also a qualifying match for the 6-man tag match. Or not tag match, excuse me. God, like I said, my brain doesn't work sometimes on Friday nights. The 6-man number 1 contender match, a phrase that I'll be using a lot the next few weeks. Matt Cardona will compete at Under Siege to be the number 1 contender for the Impact World Championship. After this, we get a nice vignette from Eric Young for Violent by Design. And then this is kind of a big kind of cool announcement here, Rich. Possibly someone that will come and challenge Josh Alexander for the X Division Championship. We get a video package announcing that El Phantasmo of New Japan Pro Wrestling and member of the Bullet Club is going to be on Impact next week.
Big fan of El Phantasmo. Lots of flips. And
I mean, moonsault back rake is all I gotta say.
Moonsault back rake and a heel that doesn't care. Like he's like, he does some ironic stuff, but yeah, he's great.
He's really fun. He is the perfect chicken shit heel. And he'll be a really good foil, I think, for Josh Alexander, who is a little bit more grapple heavy. I'm assuming that that's what he's there for. I can't imagine that ELP is going to show up and do anything but X Division matches. And I don't say that in a bad way. I want him to do that because those are matches that ELP really excels in. So we'll see how that goes. The main event of this week's Impact is Sami Callihan versus Eddie Edwards. A tale as old as time. It's D'Lo Brown compared it to the Batman fighting the Joker, and how they basically they both exist because the other one exists. Was kind of what he was getting at.
That's funny.
It is, and we've seen Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards wrestle a fuck ton of matches against each other this year. So we'll just kind of have to see if it goes. I hope it doesn't pick back up this feud. But Sami Callihan gets the win by DQ because as we are nearing the end of the show, Kenny Omega and Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows run out from the back and attack Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards. Sami Callihan is hit first by Carl Anderson, therefore rendering the match a DQ victory for Sami Callihan. And because Carl Anderson hit him first, Sami Callihan is now in the 6-man number 1 contenders match, a decision that is mind-boggling to many. Mainly me, probably, because I think it's absolutely stupid. But the Good Brothers and Kenny start wiping out Sami and Eddie. Finjuice comes out of the back for reasons I don't understand, and decide to get beat up by Kenny and the Good Brothers. But it leads to that counting as Kenny Omega's Impact appearance for his title in-ring celebration.
He gets one way to do it. I would have done something else, but
sure. Yeah, I mean it's all weird. He shows up actually without the championship belt. He doesn't have any belts on him when he comes out of the back. So they're really kind of selling that whole like he just jumped on a jet and got over there as fast as possible kind of look. He comes out in jeans and a t-shirt and something we haven't seen Kenny in a while because he's been doing a lot of suits. I don't know. You think putting Sami in that match by way of DQ makes a lot of sense there, Rich?
Something else I wouldn't have done, but I mean, they clearly didn't want to beat Eddie Edwards here for whatever reason. I think it's more in service of the angle that they set up for the main event, which is Kenny and the Good Brothers and, Eddie Edwards and Finjuice, because they want to keep Edwards strong for that main event match. And then he'll probably, catch a one-winged angel or something in the match.
I wonder, Rich, if this isn't a long-term way to get to Kenny Omega and Eddie Edwards.
Could be.
I think, Eddie Edwards is a guy that obviously, James joked about it in our group chat that, finds you someone that loves you as irrationally as Eddie Edwards loves Impact Wrestling. And I think that's, it's a funny joke, but it's also Eddie Edwards has been there year after year. He's become pretty synonymous, I think, with Impact Wrestling. He's probably the guy that if you ask, long-term wrestling fans, hey, can you name some people that are in Impact Wrestling? Eddie Edwards is probably a name that comes out pretty quickly. Amongst, of course, my best friend, Tommy Dreamer, who once sent me a message on Twitter. But I don't, Tommy, I love you. If you're listening, I know you're not, but in case you are, don't wrestle Kenny Omega. You're too old for this.
Yeah, there won't be no, yes, sir, may I have another. It's just a one-way angel and you're gone.
Yeah.
Sleep.
And it'll be a one-winged angel onto thumbtacks, and nobody wants to see that. Please don't. Just don't, Tommy, please. All right. So, Rich, we have so far Sami Callihan, Matt Cardona, Chris Bay in the 6-man number 1 contender match. We have a Knockouts tag team title match set. We have potentially a Knockouts title match set with Taylor Wilde and Deonna Purrazzo. And we have the Willie Mack W. Morrissey match. And we'll probably get some other, pretty good matches set up there. And of course, what it's looking like the main event, which is going to be Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers, as you mentioned, versus Eddie Edwards and Finn Juice. Under Siege is shaping up to be a pretty good Impact Plus special already. Who do you think is going to wind up challenging Kenny Omega based on the 6-man number 1 contender match?
I'm still interested to see who's going to fill it out, but I think W. Morrissey, you got to put him in the 6-way. I don't think he needs to win the 6-way, but he can't be in the finish.
Right.
I think they did have Willie Mack in the 6-man with them the other week. Moose is still lingering around. I would probably say Moose and Kenny was a match that everyone wanted to see when they did that 6-man. And, Moose can fight Kenny, lose, and then they can, go on to whatever.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I really feel like this is going to turn in at some point based on the 6-man here. The 6-man tag match, not the 6-man number 1 contender match. I really feel like at some point we are going to see Kenny Omega take on Eddie Edwards, and not that Eddie's going to win the belt back for Impact. As cool of a story as that would be for Mr. Impact to, bring it back. I don't see Eddie at this point in his career needing that. But I do think they'll give him a, hey, thanks for sticking around kind of booking and get that Kenny Omega rub.
That's funny.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's this week's Impact in a nutshell. That's, Rebellion. That's Mortal Kombat. Rich, anything I'm forgetting, anything I leave out, and go ahead and throw your plugs out as well.
Sure. You guys can check me out on One Nation Radio here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. If you want to follow me on Twitter at Rich Latta 32. If you guys like, music and all that, type me in any streaming service or on YouTube. You'll see me pop up. Subscribe to the channel.
Absolutely. And of course, always you can follow us at 8-Bit Suplex on Twitter. You follow me at Laughlin_Josh. You follow Sandy at Sailor Zelda. You can find our t-shirt as well as the One Nation Radio t-shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees /Social Suplex.
And the Olds on Top t-shirt.
And the new Olds on Top t-shirt that Dan jumped down my throat because I did not remember to talk about that one last week. But definitely check out the Olds on Top t-shirt. All the proceeds go right back into the show's pockets. So definitely thank you guys for your support that way. Rich, thanks for being on. Thanks for of course, always giving us the theme song for our show that we run every week. And, we'll have to have you back on here again soon.
Sure, man. Yeah, you have to come over on One Nation Radio one of these weeks where it seems like we just keep getting like busy weeks, like all these.
Always busy.
Like, I've got a list of people, and you're definitely on it that I want to get back on the show. I appreciate that, and I will certainly, anytime that you'll have me, I'll be happy to join. I had a blast last time I was there. I talked to Stardom on a podcast for the first time ever, and it was the first time I had sat down and watched a Stardom show start to finish. I took notes ferociously on a notepad to make sure that, because when you're on with Dr. Joshi, you got to be ready to go. I wanted to be ready for James and prove to James that I could do it. But yeah, no, I definitely would love to be back on with you. Someday soon, maybe we'll get James on the 8-Bit Suplex. You never know. Might twist his arm. Hit him up. So until next time, everybody, once again, I'm Josh McLaughlin. He's Rich Latta, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to the 8-Buck Suplex Podcast. See you next time.
Welcome back to the quickest podcast ever, brought to you by Kohl's.
Today's topic, Mother's Day.
Just picking out some gifts at Kohl's. There's a KitchenAid mixer calling my name.
Your name? Doing some self-gifting, huh?
Nah, that's for my mom. Baking's her love language.
Love that.
The Fitbit That's for me. Getting it for the self-care and the Kohl's Cash.
That's a big deal.
So's the 20% off and free store pickup. I can get it all in less than an hour.
Talk about shopping goals.
20% offer valid April 28th through May 2nd. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.